On December 14th, 1921, this article appeared in the Gazette newspaper under the headline, "Tawdle and Jazz Barred in School." It reads, "Dancing in the high school building will not be tolerated in the future, according to an order posted by Professor William S. Rowe. Students have been in the habit of using the cafeteria, spending their idle hours mastering new steps." Well, what about dance steps could be so provocative that the principal would ban them, I wondered. And I think that Professor Rowe recognized in those dance steps that the jazz age had arrived in Colorado Springs, and that portended massive social change, especially for females, that threatened traditional American mores and structures. In his wonderful memoir, Growing Up in Colorado Springs, the 1920s Remembered, J. Reed wrote this: "The mid-1920s produced the jazz age, and with it came dramatic changes in lifestyles. Women bought their hair for the first time, and skirt hems jumped from the ankle to above the knee in a few short months. Colorado Springs went along with the times, and the flapper became the life of the party at the Saturday night dances held at the Broadmoor and Antlers Hotel ballrooms and at Hiawatha Gardens in Manitou. The foxtrot and the Charleston replaced the one-step and the two-step, and cheek-to-cheek dancing became acceptable. Tag dances were introduced, and the popularity of a girl could be gauged by the number of times the men in the stag line cut in on her." Reed's little paragraph tells us a lot about the jazz age in Colorado Springs, which was also known as the Roaring Twenties, and it spanned roughly 1920 to 1930. Although many jazz age characteristics emerged a decade or more before, and many last until today. Today, I'm going to be talking about first a few characteristics of the jazz age, and then I'll talk about the flapper and finish up talking about dance and dancing in our region's history. F. Scott Fitzgerald invented the term jazz age to describe the post-World War I era. Life seemed to speed up. It was a time of prosperity, urbanization, industrialization, and dramatic social changes of fast cars, wild youth, engine-soaked parties, they say. Jazz music and dance from African-American culture took the nation's young people by storm. A true American cultural form, the emergence of movies, radio, and advanced recording devices made jazz acceptable at home and abroad. Mass-produced consumer goods, especially cars, profoundly reshaped America. Reed estimated that in 1920, 1 of every 10 people owned cars, offering wider mobility and certainly privacy than ever before. He talked about how his family enjoyed auto ownership. They could load into a car for a spin into the countryside. And you can see here, this is a lovely image from the Pikes Peak Library District's digital photo archives of a camping event in which a car is kind of neatly used as a shelter, and then a lean toe up against it. And then it looks like we have a young teenage girl, what we'd later we're going to be calling a flapper here pretty soon, leaning up against that car. Ultimately, Juan's dad allowed him to use the family car for a private date with the girl. And that was really a new thing in the 1920s. Cars redefined rituals of dating and courting and offered privacy outside the scrutiny of parents and other chaperones. We can't talk about the 1920s without discussing the Volstead Act. It was a federal law from 1920 through 1933, and it prohibited the production and sale of alcoholic beverages. Now, of course, it was intended to end alcoholism and its abuses, but it led to much increased crime, and it opened the door to organized crime families with many other changes. Colorado had already become a dry state in 1916 by a narrow margin of voters, 52% for and 48% against. So obviously, many people still wanted their alcoholic beverages. And in Colorado Springs, bootlegging with upwards of 900% profit, according to a January 1929 news article, flourished throughout the dry era. The library's Pikes Peak Newsfinder newspaper index lists 190 articles dedicated to bootlegging from March 1916 through 1935. The most shocking event happened in April 1930, which we see documented on the screen, when the body of Andrew Lombardi, known as the King of Bootleggers in Colorado Springs, was discovered in what was called a Chicago-style murder. A year later, his wife Josephine, who already had been arrested for bootlegging, was rearrested. The Jazz Age saw the resurgence of the white supremacist Ku Klux Klan at all levels of government and society throughout the nation. While Colorado Springs avoided its hegemony, the KKK was especially prevalent in Colorado from about 1921 through 1925. Among other things, it opposed Central and Southern European immigration. It sought to purify America and return it back to a better time, a former time. And one of its goals was to protect pure American womanhood. The KKK was instrumental in the adoption of state and national prohibition, and it actively worked to root out bootlegging. Shocking new dance steps characterized the age. The foxtrot allowed previously forbidden body contact. The Charleston, popularized by African Americans, featured frenzied footwork and swinging arms. And here we see, this is also my title image, and this is a Charleston dance competition in 1926 at the Parody Club in New York City. And it's from the Hutton Archive, and one of the part of the Getty images. And then, of course, there was the toddle that was talked about in our headline when we first started. And it was a sort of a foxtrot style dance with, they say, a smack of jazz and a splash of the shimmy. These and other popular dancers offered freedom of expression as youth gleefully took to them. And we notice here in this image of the advertisement for the toddle that there's very, very close body contact for the first time, which had been unacceptable to older generations and would remain so for a while here in Colorado Springs. And the dances demanded new styles of dress, new behaviors, new freedoms. For the most iconic characteristic of the Jazz Age, the flapper, young women who defied traditions that had kept them powerless and dependent. Arriving in the wake of women winning the vote in 1920, they reinvented women's expectations and roles. The flapper was the emancipated new woman who cut her hair, wore loose knee-length dresses and cosmetics unheard of in past times. She smoked and drank in public, was more open about sex. She was considered sexy, flirtatious, very pretty, very charming, very foolhardy. And these are images of Colorado Springs women in 1928. And I'm not trying to suggest that they were foolish and foolhardy or anything negative about them. I think they're absolutely adorable. They're from the Pikes Library District's digital photo archives, and they're part of the Ray Turner collection. And on my left is Gertrude Hamilton. These are both in 1928, and Gertrude was a teacher in D11 for nearly 40 years. She's just a living doll there, I think, and she's 22 years old at that time. And on my right, we don't know the name of that young woman. The title is Woman on Sidewalk, and she's standing in front, interestingly enough, I think, of Blair's College, which was a business school that educated women, a post-secondary business school. And so it could just be coincidental that she's standing there, or she could be a faculty or student from that college. And so I think they absolutely are wonderful images of flappers in Colorado Springs in the late 1920s. More than anything else, there was another version, by the way, of the flapper. She was an independent, athletic girl. She's sort of a pal buddy who golfed, hiked, cycled, and was competent in everything she did. And again, I think this is a wonderful image from the collection at the library. She's unidentified. The image is called Fender Seat, and it's popular, and she's wearing a finger wave hairstyle and clothing that were popular in the late 1920s. She's sitting on a 1920 Chevrolet, and she just looks like she would be a kind of a casual, carefree, and lovely friend. She's wearing what possibly was considered risque dress at the time, kind of a plunging neckline and sleeveless, and her legs are showing, but she looks like just a wonderful person there. And again, Nothing intended negative about her. More than anything else, flappers were famous for their rakish attire, and again, we see that rakish attire here. The ready-made women's wear industry had just taken off, allowing masses of women to go from frumpy homemade clothes to silk stockings and fashionable designs. Her face-framing bob, plucked eyebrows, and cosmetics allowed her agency over her own beauty for the first time. Many people were shocked at the shortness of her skirts. Others saw them as one of the most sensible things that women ever did. Her stride lengthened out, allowing her to compete on more even terms with men. With her confident walk, replacing the mincing steps of long, narrow skirts and tight corsets, she exuded freedom, power, and confidence. Flappers were often derided. She seemed a threat to the morals and status quo of American middle-class life and to the morals of American men. Others celebrated her, claiming that she added to the joy and beauty of the world by learning how to make herself attractive. Well, Reed illuminated the sexy, flirtatious, popular girl in his essay, but female athleticism was very present in Colorado Springs. Women tennis and golf champions regularly appeared in the Gazette. Girls were encouraged to take up aquatic sports, claimed to preserve the figure more than any other known exercise. A 1925 swim meet at the Broadmoor Swimming Beach drew upwards of 10,000 spectators. The most popular event combined both athleticism and beauty. There was a bathing beauty contest which featured a line of young ladies clad in swimming suits, heels, and stockings rolled below the knees. And this, I think, is such an iconic flapper image for Colorado Springs. It's from the newspaper film, the 1925 Gazette newspaper film. And so it's not very clear. It's pretty cloudy. And I really appreciate that Aaron Barnes, the photo archivist for the library, made it such that I could even make this slide for this program. It's so iconic and just so interesting and charming. I wish we had a better image for the collection here. F. Scott Fitzgerald claimed that the invention of the flapper was in 1912, and so that's quite a bit before the 1920s, a few years, when dancers Vernon and Irene Castle, and these are from Wikipedia, she with her bobbed hair and slinky dresses made public dancing respectable with their stylish and refined versions of the foxtrot and tango. By 1916, Irene was the most popular movie star in America. She's what we would consider an influencer now, I guess, a TikTok influencer. She was a fashion icon, considered most responsible for the flapper styles, which she based on practicality. She bobbed her hair so that it would dry quickly after swimming. She wore bands to keep it in place. She wore loose-fitting dresses for dancing, and thousands of admiring flappers emulated her all over the country and into Western Europe. And with their movies, the Castles ignited the new cheek-to-cheek dancing craze that would catch on in Colorado Springs in the 1920s. Throughout the years, Colorado Springs Society always enjoyed dancing events. An account of a May 1877 gala organized by the Pikes Rangers, which was a volunteer militia organized for Homeland Defense, describes a night of fun. A little before 9 o'clock, it says, the guests began to arrive, and by 9:30, the cornet band played 2 marches, while the happy throng began promenading, and soon the string band filled the hall with delicious music, to which all joined in a grand march, winding up with the Sicilian Circle. The lively hour sped swiftly away to the sound of music, merry laughter, and flying feet. Many remained at 4 a.m. in the morning. So these were marches and circles, which were folk dances, and they involved hand-to-hand contact, but not body contact. That was unacceptable, obviously, in 1877. City founder, General William Jackson Palmer, and here he is, one of my all-time favorite historic characters in Colorado Springs, he had an annual children's party that was the event of the year for young kids. A young attendee recalled that before the party, children were trained in their manners. The boys and girls learned how to curtsy and bow and to dance. The thrill of a lifetime for this young girl was when the general bowed and asked her to dance, just as he did the other girls. She said she was so afraid that she wouldn't do the steps right. But he reassured her, saying such things as, "Oh, what a beautiful dancer you are." The dances at that time would be quadrilles and marches, and I don't really know the exact period of time, but I'm assuming that it's been sometime between 1895 and 1906 when General Palmer and his children, his daughters, returned to Colorado Springs after Queen's death in England in 1894 and before his 1906 auto accident, which crippled him. Ceremonial dances performed in 1912 at the Garden of the Gods by Native Americans at the Shankive, a street carnival from 1912 until 1930, which is the ancestor of the Pikes Bus Rodeo, which goes on today and will be happening soon, showcased the culture and customs of the Ute and Native Americans, provided them with a little bit of income, and reminded those masses of audience that you can see in the background there, and there were certainly throngs of visitors watching them, reminded those people, those Anglos and those in the audience, that the Ute, the Native Americans, were still here as a people. The Ute were the most popular tourist attraction that year, and they performed what was termed weird dances in the Gazette. Winfield Scott Stratton donated land for a park near Cheyenne Canyon, where weekly dances with live music at the pavilion, and here's an image of it in a postcard, drew crowds in the summers. A June 1914 program offered a selection of 15 dances alternating between the waltz and the two-step, with such titles as Katie Did, Hijinks, The Midnight Girl, and Tissamy. And we see here a transition to a little bit more close body dancing, although it would not have been body contact there. Well, these examples that I've just covered illustrate only a few dance events in regional history. But to some, public dancing was a slippery slope to hell, especially for young females. In January 1913, it came to light that 3 young girls under 16 years of age had been regulars at a downtown dance hall, and according to the newspaper, they had committed the unpardonable sin, which is not defined in the paper. 2 were sisters. The oldest had been married at age 14. The sister's stepfather and the husband worked in the hall, and the newspaper suggested that it benefited them for the girls to be at the dance. 2 men were sentenced to including the husband, one of them, were sentenced to the penitentiary for ruining the lives of the girls, and the girls asked to be sent to the industrial school at Morrison, Colorado, to learn job skills. One of them said, "It's my only chance, and I want to do better." At that time in 1913, police had no authority over dance halls. City Council immediately in February passed an ordinance to license and regulate dance venues that required public or paid admission. The law facilitated the 1926 closing of a popular dance hall as a public nuisance. It was claimed that liquor laws were ignored there. Children or teenagers were unsupervised. There were petting parties, brawls, boys visiting a nearby car and returning drunk, and so on. Billy Sunday, who was known as the greatest evangelistic speaker of the 20th century, and here he is, and this again is from Wikipedia, he preached against dance and dance halls when he visited Colorado Springs for a 5-week revival in 1914. Here are a few examples from his sermon on that topic. "If you sow dance halls, you will reap prostitutes and illegitimate children. More people backslide because of cards and dancing than because of the saloon. The dance is the rottenest, most hellish, vice-producing institution that ever wriggled from the depths of hell. It is the hotbed of immorality and vice. When girls go to these dances, they learn to smoke and drink. And you can bet that when a girl gets so low that she will smoke and drink, that she is on the toboggan slide and going to hell fast. There are 500,000 fallen women in the United States, and to think that 370,000 of those lost their virtue through the dance halls." Not all agreed with Sunday. A critic, self-identified as a Christian girl, wrote to the newspaper, I think, and as many other clean-minded people who think, who do not express their opinion on things they do not know about or have not seen, that Mr. Sunday is wrong in attacking the dances at Stratton Park. He should go and see for himself and then do all the preaching he cares to about it. I know he would not have enough to say against the dances of Stratton Park to fill a short paragraph. The opposition of Professor Rowe, Billy Sunday, and other opponents to dancing, and there were many, could not stop the jazz age in Colorado Springs. June 8th, 1923, was declared Valentino Day. Rudolph Valentino, the most popular movie actor and sex symbol of the 1920s silent films, who was idolized as the great lover, the Latin lover, or simply as Valentino, appeared at the Hiawatha Gardens in Manitou, where he and his wife Winifred performed the Argentine tango before a packed house to a wildly enthusiastic audience. And this image is from his movie, The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, a wildly popular movie from 1921 through 1924. Clearly, by 1923, jazz and its many forms of dance had found a respectable and enthusiastic home in Colorado Springs. Throughout the jazz age, females expanded their political, economic, and public space. New job opportunities arose after World War I when increasing numbers of women entered the business world. The 1924 local city directory lists the occupations of approximately 2,400 working women. One Reed's mother held down multiple jobs. In addition to her duties as mother of two and housewife, she ran a rooming house during the tourist season, worked nights at Cragmore Sanatorium, arriving home each morning to process any patients who were en route to the Woodman Sanatorium. Both of those were tuberculosis sanatoriums. And I suppose that the ones going to Woodman were residents at her rooming house. There was a seismic social shift for females, which was one of Prohibition's main products. A 1921 Colorado state law barred women from entering saloons, from working in places selling alcohol, and from buying alcohol. Women did not consume alcohol in public, but during Prohibition, they did all of those. They did do all of those things. Young, unchaperoned people, both male and female, spent hours visiting dance halls, sneaking in flasks of illegal hooch, dancing, drinking the night away. According to Juan Reed, fashionable leather-encased hip flasks were seen at the Saturday night dances at the Antlers and Broadmoor hotels, where setups of mixes were served with no questions asked. Females expanded and equalized their economic, social, and leisure worlds thanks to illegal alcohol consumed in public in dance halls. J. Juan Reed and the few examples I've been able to cover in this discussion leave little doubt that the jazz age was alive and flourishing in Colorado Springs, with cars offering freedom, transportation, privacy, Prohibition-era free-flowing booze and bootleggers, private and public dances, flappers empowered by new styles of dressing, broader economic opportunities, expanded public arena, and more than anything else, her right to vote, I think. I believe that Professor Rowe foresaw those changes, but his attempt at staving them off by barring new dances was not to be. As a final word on the flapper, Juan Reed wrote that the strength of the Ku Klux Klan in Colorado gradually diminished after 1925, finally disappearing from the political scene altogether. No one knew the exact reason for its decline. Perhaps, he said, with the advent of the flapper, pure American womanhood no longer needed any protection. But I'm giving the final word to the girls on that. Many don't know that throughout the teens, of the 19-teens, starting in 1913, Colorado Springs was a hotbed of feminism. It was the home of radical militant suffragists who demanded the vote very much in public spaces. They went so far as to go to the streets of Washington, D.C., out in front of the White House to demand the vote. Many were arrested and put in jail, and so certainly those women were occupying public spaces that were previously dominated by men. You wouldn't expect in those days respectable middle and upper class women to be standing on street corners, nor would you find them in jail. In 1916, 18 Colorado Springs high schoolers, girls emulated from Colorado Springs High School, girls emulated their elders, organized in the Royal Society of Suffragettes. The girls rejected the arbitrary protections of males that stifled their autonomy. Formerly, they said, when a girl wished to attend a function without a bid or without a date, she remained at home. But now, girls can attend stunts with impunity under the protection of our already famous club. These young girls claimed, I think, the space and the power to dance the night away at school dances and other public functions protected by their own authority. I'm calling those our earliest flappers. Thank you. I have a few, I hope you can read these. I have a few recommended readings if you're interested in pursuing this topic any further. And I'd just like you to have a chance to look through those if you'd like to. And thank you very much for your attention. And I enjoyed not only researching and writing this up, but presenting it. Thank you very much.